Z axis. Capital Z represents impedance. Always make sure you write small z when you mean small z and capital Z when you mean capital Z. So these are the two differential equations that we get based on this elementary circuit analysis. Now unknowns are V and I. And the independent variable, of course, is small z. Now both equations contain both the unknowns. So these are coupled differential equations for the two unknowns. Okay. Now to decouple them, the method that we use is we differentiate both sides of equation 9 with respect to small z. We will get d2v by dz square on the left hand side, and we will get minus z di by dz on the right hand side. Then I use equation 10. There I have got the value of di by dz. So I put that there. As a result, I get an equation which is purely for v. d2v by dz square turns out to be zy multiplied by v. Okay. And a similar exercise can be done for the other equation also. I take equation 10, differentiate both sides with small z. I will get d2i by dz square equal to minus y dv by dz. I plug in dv by dz value from equation 9. So I get a second order differential equation for I also. Okay. So we have decoupled the equations, which is good. Now these are second order differential equations, ordinary differential equations. Solutions are easy to write. V as a function of z is v plus e to the power minus gamma z. I'll explain what gamma is. Plus v minus e to the power plus gamma z. I as a function of small z is I plus e to the power minus gamma z plus I minus e to the power plus gamma z. V plus, V minus, I plus and I minus are the four arbitrary constants involved, and gamma has been defined as a parameter which is square root of zy. In general, gamma will be a complex number because z and y are complex numbers. Okay. Our objective now is to determine the arbitrary constants as much as possible. Gamma is square root of zy, which is square root of r plus j omega l multiplied by g plus j omega c, right? Gamma will have a real part and an imaginary part. Gamma, I'll explain why, but take it from me right now. Gamma is known as complex propagation constant. Alpha is known as the attenuation constant, and beta is known as phase constant. There's a reason why we call it attenuation constant or phase constant, etc. But supposing we have agreed to this solution, this proposed solution, let us put it back in one of the earlier equations. Let's say in equation 9, V had been derived in terms of V plus and V minus. I also had been derived in terms of I plus and I minus, of course. So we plug all that in equation 9. and we get a long equation containing terms e to the power minus gamma z multiplied by something and e to the power plus gamma z multiplied by something on both sides. Now this equation has to be valid for all values of small z. That means along all points, at all points along the length of the line. If that were to happen, the coefficient of e to the power minus gamma z should be same on both sides of this equation, and coefficient of e to the power plus gamma z should also be the same on both sides. Then only this equation can be satisfied for all values of z. You can verify the math. This essentially leads me to these two equations. I plus and I minus apparently can be related to V plus and V minus by doing this. I plus turns out to be gamma divided by z multiplied by V plus. I minus turns out to be minus gamma by z divided by V minus. Multiplied by V minus. At this point, we define another parameter. I'll explain the name of this parameter later. It is called characteristic impedance of the line. It is denoted by z with a suffix naught or 0. It is defined as z divided by gamma. That means r plus j omega l divided by gamma. If I choose that definition, then I plus and I minus can be expressed in terms of V plus and V minus by equations 21 and 22. So I plug these two into the equation for I plus, equation for I, which is equation 14, and take 13 also with me. I finally get two equations for voltage and current along the length of the line, and only two arbitrary constants are remaining now. Other two have been related to the remaining two. Okay. These are known as telegrapher's equations. There was a time we used to have a system called telegraphy for sending information using pulses. Those days are gone, but transmission lines were being used by telegraphers in those days. So these equations were given that name at that time. Now V plus and V minus, of course, need to be determined based on what is happening on the load side, what is happening on the source side of the line, etc. They will not go away just like that. Okay. But we are glad that we have only two arbitrary constants left out of 4. And let me reiterate that primary constants are R, L, G, C, as we have seen already. Z naught and gamma, which we have defined today, are known as secondary constants. They actually determine the performance of the line. RLGC are determined primarily by the manner in which the line has been constructed. And depending on those values, we generally figure out Z naught and gamma to study the behavior of the line. Z naught, you can easily see it was supposed to be Z divided by gamma, and gamma is square root of Zy. So Z naught becomes square root of Z divided by Y. And you know that Z is R plus J omega L, Y is G plus J omega C. Both Z and Y are per unit length parameters. So length cancels out once you divide Z by Y, and Z naught turns out to be having the unit ohm. Gamma, on the other hand, turns out to have a unit per unit length. Okay, both real and imaginary parts of gamma will have unit per unit length. Real part actually is measured in Napier per meter, that is the attenuation constant, and imaginary part of gamma is measured in radian per meter, that is known as phase constant, beta. Gamma is alpha plus j beta in general. Now these two equations, just take it from me right now, I'll prove it later. The first component or the first term on the right hand side of V is called forward going component or incident wave, while the other one is known as reflected component or reflected wave. And the same thing for current also. In Vz equation on the right hand side, in the first term, you see that gamma is alpha plus j beta. So you get V plus multiplied by e to the power minus alpha z, which is assuming that V plus is a real number. If it is not that, then also nothing will change much. So e to the power minus alpha z is a purely decaying term with z. That means the amplitude of the term will go down as wave travels along the length of the line because of this factor. The second part of this component or the third term is e to the power minus j beta z, which is a purely phase term. So the signal will also undergo a phase shift as it travels along the length of the line. Decay of a signal is also known as attenuation. That is why alpha is called attenuation constant. Phase shift, of course, is the reason why we are calling beta as phase constant. It is radian per unit length. Okay. Let me stop this one and show you another one. Here I have reiterated what we did in the previous document. I've not changed any equation numbers. All the numbers that you are seeing for equations are borrowed from that document. V plus and V minus are the two arbitrary constants. Vz is V plus e to the power minus gamma z plus V minus e to the power plus gamma z. Iz is 1 upon z naught V plus e to the power minus gamma z minus V minus e to the power plus gamma. These are telegrapher's equations. Z and Y are line impedance and line admittance per unit length. Z naught is square root of Z upon Y, which is given by square root of R plus j omega L divided by G plus j omega C. Complex propagation constant, gamma is square root of Zy, which is square root of R plus j omega L multiplied by G plus j omega C. R, L, G, C are known as primary constants. Z naught and gamma are known as secondary constants. Okay, summary. Now let's look at equation 23 again to see what is going on. Let us assume that V plus and V minus are real numbers. It will not change the conclusions much. The first term on the right hand side of this equation is V plus e to the power minus alpha z e to the power minus j beta z. I have said this already. E to the power minus alpha z denotes decay in the amplitude. So alpha is known as attenuation constant. Alpha will determine the rate at which the amplitude will attenuate. Okay. And beta will determine the manner in which the phase shift will be introduced in this term. Beta can be measured in radians per meter or also degrees per meter. Alpha, of course, is measured in Napier per meter or dB per meter, because we can always convert back and forth. Now, one thing, oh yeah, this is well known anyway. I've said that already. By the way, remember that gamma has real part whose unit is different from the unit for the imaginary part. So we cannot write a full unit for gamma. We simply say per meter. Alpha is in Napiers per meter, beta is in radians per meter. We cannot mix these two in a single unit. So the method that we use is we write gamma simply as per meter. But we write alpha as Napier per meter and beta as radian per meter. Now, one thing that we have so far not looked at is time dependence. We know that it is supposed to be e to the power j omega t type throughout in all voltages and currents. So if I look at the voltage equation again and include time dependence, I should include e to the power plus j omega t in both the terms. Now, what does this mean? That is actually the signal. We don't write t dependence generally, that's it. And similarly for current also. You can write e to the power j omega t either outside the parenthesis or within the parenthesis. Both ways you are okay. Now what happens is, for a moment, forget the decay part. Look at the two components, e to the power minus j beta z and e to the power plus j omega t. If they are combined, you will get, I'm talking about the first term on the right hand side. These two terms, the last two terms combined will give you e to the power omega t minus beta j, j multiplied by omega t minus beta j. So, if we imagine a 2D surface in the zt plane having a constant phase angle, which is omega t minus beta z, that phase, constant phase surface is defined by omega t minus beta z equal to some constant. For different constant values, you will have different surfaces. But let's imagine that we are trying to look for an imaginary surface where omega t minus beta z is constant. You want to maintain constant phase shift on this surface. It's a 2D surface in z and t plane. It's an imaginary plane because one of the dimensions is physical dimension, the other one is time. In fact, if you remember the equation of a plane in xy coordinates, omega t minus beta z can easily fit that. Omega t minus beta z equal to constant actually is representing a 2D plane in the zt domain. Anyway, leaving that aside, the point is that if you want to maintain a constant phase shift in equation 31, that means on the right hand side you want to maintain a constant and time is continuously increasing, z has no choice but to increase if you want to continue looking at this same surface. This is what is called as the speed at which the constant phase surface, this will determine the speed at which the constant phase surface will travel. It's a very convoluted way of looking at it, but please bear with me. This constant phase surface, it is also known as wave front. It is dictated by omega t minus beta z equal to some constant. And if you want to maintain constant phase on it, this surface has to travel at a speed because time is continuously increasing. That speed is given the name phase velocity of the wave. This is the basic explanation for why signal propagates down the line. A constant phase surface has no choice but to move. The same point on the waveform which has a constant phase will travel. So the entire wave has to travel. We'll come back to it if you want later, but look at the mathematics first. Omega t minus beta z equal to constant is the definition of constant phase surface. Now to determine the speed at which this will happen, what I do is I take equation 31 and differentiate both sides with time. I get omega dt by dt minus beta dz by dt equal to 0. Dt by dt is 1. So omega minus beta dz by dt equal to 0. We define dz by dt as the phase velocity. That is the rate at which z is increasing for the same surface with time. So Vp is dz by dt, and that, looking at the equation we have got, is easily seen to be omega divided by beta. The phase velocity of this signal or this wave is defined by omega divided by beta. And of course, phase velocity divided by frequency will give us the corresponding wavelength, which is Vp divided by f. Okay. Vp is omega divided by beta, and omega is 2 pi f. So lambda can also be written as 2 pi divided by beta. These are well-known equations, even in low frequency signals. Beta is 2 pi divided by lambda. Vp is omega divided by beta. That is something new here. Okay. Yeah, I said that already, that omega t minus beta z equal to constant actually fits a plane's description, 2D plane's description. So sometimes these kind of waves are also known as plane waves. Now, note that in a lot of books, and even when I talk, sometimes I will say signal instead of wave. So don't get too worried. It's the same thing. Some people call it signal, some people call it wave, some people mix the words all the time. Now the second term on the right hand side of that equation, in a similar manner, you can look at this term also. Here, the constant phase surface will be dictated by omega t plus beta z equal to constant. So Vp actually will be minus omega by beta. That means the travel will now happen in the negative z direction. So the second term represents a wave traveling in minus z direction. That is why it is called reflected wave. The first term represents a wave traveling in plus z direction. Second term has negative Vp. The numerical value is not different, but the sign will be negative, because now the constant phase surface is omega t plus beta z equal to constant. So if you differentiate with time, etc., you will get Vp as a negative value. That is why the second term is said to represent a backward traveling wave or reflected wave, while the first term is said to represent an incident or forward traveling wave. And for the second term, z actually will be a negative, because it is in the minus z direction. So plus alpha z in effect will become minus alpha z. So there will be decay for the reflected term also. It will not grow for sure. That plus sign is misleading there, because z value is negative actually for the second term. This is extendable to current also. There also you can define reflected wave and incident wave in a similar manner. Phase velocity turns out to have the same value here also. In fact, even things like lambda, etc., are the same for both voltage wave and current wave. So these equations essentially are interpreted in the manner that I'm showing here. In Vt or in Vz equation, the first term is forward voltage wave, the second term is reflected voltage wave. In I equation, the first term is forward or incident current wave. The second term, including minus sign, is the reflected wave, reflected current wave. Okay. This is a real fact that most transmission lines see reflected waves all the time. All the signal does not go forward. Some of it comes back to the generator. Now, there is a concept called lossless line, which is actually a theoretical concept because no line can be lossless. No, fully lossless is not possible. But it's a good concept against which we compare real life situations. Lossless line is the line for which alpha is 0. That means no attenuation. The only phase change would occur in the wave, amplitudes will remain unchanged. So if you put alpha equal to 0, the equation for Vz becomes simply V plus e to the power minus j beta z plus V minus e to the power plus j beta. And similarly for Iz also, alpha is gone, it's 0. So e to the power alpha z is 1. Or e to the power, e to the power minus alpha z is also 1, both ways. Now one way to realize lossless line, at least in theory, is to make R equal to 0 and G equal to 0. So if you do that, you can see that gamma equal to square root of zy will become square root of 0 plus j omega L multiplied by 0 plus j omega C. So j omega comes out, square root of LC remains. You get a purely imaginary term for gamma. That means alpha is 0 and beta is, of course, omega multiplied by square root of LC in case of a lossless. For a lossless line, Z0, the characteristic impedance, can also be worked out. Since R is 0 and G is 0, you get simply square root of L by C. It's a real number for a lossless. Distortionless line is another concept, a bit hypothetical, but it's a useful golden standard that we strive for in real life. This is a line for which alpha is independent of frequency and beta is a linear function of frequency. If we impose these two conditions on the very definitions of alpha and beta and do some derivations, it is possible to show that the condition to be satisfied for a line to be distortionless, is R upon L equal to G by C. I have not done the derivation. You can try it out. Otherwise, we can always revisit this. This is a very important condition for a line to be distortionless. Unfortunately, in real life, it's not that easy to achieve this condition. If you take this condition and put it back in the formula for gamma, it is easy to figure out. You can prove this yourself that for a distortionless line, alpha equal to square root of Rg and beta equal to omega times square root of Lc. I'm hurrying it up because I know these derivations are straightforward. In fact, I'll send you some material where I think the derivations are done. Now, let's look at one problem. A telephonic transmission line operating at 795.7747 Hertz has the following parameters. Series resistance, we were calling it loop resistance, but they are calling it series resistance. Fine. So R is 4 ohm per kilometer. You have to convert it into per meter value. Inductance is 3 millihenry per kilometer. Again, convert it into per meter. Leakage conductance, capital G, is 1 microsiemens, which is micromho per kilometer. We will convert that into per meter value also. And shunt capacitance is 0.015 microfarad per kilometer. We'll have to convert that also in per meter terms. frequency of interest is given, and these values are measured at the frequency of interest. That's what they're saying. So I guess there is some variation in RLGC with frequency in real life. So for our frequency, these are the values. Now the job is to calculate alpha and beta and Z naught. Formulas are there, but I want you to go through the calculations carefully because it is very easy to make mistakes if you're not careful. R is 4 ohm per kilometer. So this becomes 4 multiplied by 10 raised to the power minus 3 ohm per meter. L is 3 millihenry per kilometer. So it becomes 3 into 10 to the power minus 6 Henry per meter. G was given as 1 micro mho or Siemens per meter. So that becomes 10 to the power minus 9 mho per meter. And C was, I think, given as 0.015 microfarad per kilometer. So this becomes 15 picofarad per meter. Omega is 2 pi f. It works out to almost 5,000 radian per second. So first thing is to calculate Z, R plus J omega. It is better to work in polar system in such problems. That helps in avoiding mistakes. R has been plugged in. J omega L has been plugged in. You can double check my calculations. We get 4 plus J15 multiplied by 10 raised to the power minus 3 omega per meter as the value of Z. Okay. This converted to polar system gives me 15.5242 milliohm per meter with an angle of 75 point something degrees. You can double check all this once you get the result. So Z is known in polar system and in rectangular system also. Y similarly has to be done. 10 to the power minus 9 is the value of G plus J omega C. What I get is 1 plus J75 nano ohm per meter. Converting into polar system, I get 75.0067 nano mho, not ohm, nano mho per meter. And the angle is almost 89.23 degrees. Now your job is to calculate gamma and Z naught. Gamma is square root of Z multiplied by square root of Z pi. Since you are in polar form, it is easy to take square root. In rectangular form, also you can do the square root, but it's more difficult. So what I do is I go to this value, take square root of 15.5242, which is approximately 3.94. And since I'm taking square root, the angle will be halved. It will become 37.5 something, 37.5343 degrees, okay? And the units, of course, are also square root of the actual unit of Z. Then I go to Y and take the square root. Again, the angle is halved and the magnitude is square rooted to get these values. Now I multiply these two square rooted values to get gamma. Okay. Since I multiply, the two angles add up now. 44 point something and 37 point something, they add. The magnitudes multiply. Note that I have written gamma only as per meter. I have not mentioned any units. So gamma in polar form turns out to be 34.12 into 10 to the power minus 6 with an angle of 82.1524 degrees per meter. Now you take real part of this to get alpha. 34.12 into 10 to the power minus 6 multiplied by cos of 82.1524 degrees. That answer will be Nepar per meter. And I got this number, 4.66 into 10 to the power minus 6 Nepar per meter. You can double check this. Beta will be 34.12 into 10 to the power minus 6 multiplied by sine of 82.1524. And the answer will be in radian per meter by default. I get that has 33.80 into 10 to the power minus 6 radian per meter, which works out to 0.001937 degrees per meter. Per meter phase change is very small in this transmission. Now for Z naught, I do square root of Z divided by square root of Y. So 15 point, sorry, what was the number? 3.94 divided by 273.85 into 10 to the power minus 6. Okay. Just a minute. Square root of Z is so much. And here, this is in, you better be careful here, because see, the problem is square root of Z has to be calculated in square root of ohm per meter, while the value of square root of Z that you have got, in fact, you can begin from this point. It is in milli ohm per meter. So that 10 to the power minus 3 cannot be ignored. It has to be brought in to take the square root. Be careful there. Ideally, you should be calculating square root of Z simply as square root of omega per meter. I've done that. I've been very careful in making sure I'm not messing up in these things. Okay. And similarly for Y, and what I get finally is Z naught equal to 455 ohm with an angle of minus 7.08 degrees. If you break it up into rectangular form, it turns out that its real part is very large compared to imaginary part. So it is almost a real number, but not perfectly real. These calculations are a must, for real life situations. The last problem for today is for the transmission line considered in problem 1, calculate the speed at which the telephonic signal will travel. You know beta. From the previous calculations. Wait a minute. Yeah, beta is right here. It is 33.80 into 10 to the power minus 6 radian per meter. So all you do is omega by beta. We have proven that phase velocity is omega divided by beta. 5000 is the value for omega in radian per second divided by 33.80 multiplied by 10 to the power 6 meters per second. This gives you, please make sure my calculations are not wrong. This is what I got. The signal will travel at so many kilometers per second on this particular telephonic line.